We'll give it a minute. It looks like we've got quite a few people jumping in. All right, well, people are logging on. I just wanted to say good afternoon and welcome to everybody who's joining us for our third webinar of the Outdoor Recreation Knowledge Exchange series. My name is Haley Sorg, and I am the J. Kemmerer Worth Institute Extension Educator with the University of Wyoming, and I will be your moderator today. This webinar series is a partnership with a bunch of really great organizations. So as you can see on the screen here, this is a partnership between Colorado State University Extension, the Colorado Office of Outdoor Recreation, the University of Wyoming Extension, the newly named J. Kemmerer Wyoming Outdoor Recreation, Tourism and Hospitality, or Worth Institute, and the Wyoming Office of Outdoor Recreation. So we are all working together to enhance outdoor recreation across our states and communities. I am also joined here today with Guinevere Nelson, who is the Douglas County Extension Director for Colorado State University Extension. She is my co-host and co-creator of this series, and today she will be moderating the Q&A portion of the Q&A chat. So as you can see in the lower bar of your screen, you can put in your questions there for your panelists. We will be answering these at the end, but Guinevere will be moderating that throughout the webinar. So if you have any questions throughout today's session, please feel free to drop those in the chat or in the Q&A section, and Guinevere will be able to take hold of those. Today, we are exploring getting your outdoor recreation idea from concept to fruition, talking about resources, tips, and tricks. I think that this is one that many people are very excited to hear about, something that a lot of our communities are seeing and wanting to know a little bit more about. I'm sure it's nothing new when I tell you that Colorado and Wyoming are both known for our outdoor recreation opportunities. We have a lot of people here calling in from a lot of different states. So if you don't know that, Wyoming, Colorado are big outdoor recreation states. For years, people have been flocking to our communities to partake in these rich recreation experiences that we offer. And with our outdoor recreation industries only continuing to grow in our states, the many communities are looking to develop or continue to develop these opportunities for not only the tourists coming in, but their residents as well. So today we hope to shed a little bit more light on some tips, some tricks, some resources for your communities, organizations, and individuals as well, looking to get your amazing outdoor recreation ideas to fruition. And so taking a look a little bit more about our agenda today, we've got a lot of really great panelists to go through, as well as getting to the Q&A section of this. So as you see, we have a few polling questions as well that we will be having, just some more information that we'd like to gather from you as participants as we continue to talk about outdoor recreation, the industry, throughout this knowledge exchange as well, and then have all of our panelist presentations as well. At the end, we will have time for Q&A. So there was a lot of you who submitted questions beforehand in the registration. So we will be going through those. But if you have questions, again, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be adding those into the mix as well. Before we get going, I also wanted to mention that we have 2 more webinars coming up. So we have one on January 13th, and this one we will be discussing lessons learned from municipalities and organizations in outdoor recreation planning and response. And then on February 13th, for our last outdoor recreation webinar for this series, we will have panelists discussing the future of outdoor recreation and opportunities to make it a resilient part of our economy. So there is a QR code here on the screen. If you have not registered already, please make sure you register. These are going to be some really great last few sessions that we have with our webinar series as well. And I am so excited to introduce you all today to our esteemed panelists who are bringing us a wealth of knowledge and experience. Today, we are joined by Matt Nunez with the Colorado Office of Outdoor Recreation, Mike Kuseik with Wyoming Pathways, Jody Kennedy with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and Laurel Stevens with Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources. And so before we jump into our panelist presentations, here is our first interactive poll. So if you have not used Mentimeter, this is a Mentimeter poll. You can feel free to scan this QR code, or I believe Guinevere should be dropping the link into the chat that you can follow. And please feel free to give us your answers to our first question, which is, what do you hope to get out of this webinar? We will be keeping these open, so feel free to put your information into that Menti while we get into our first presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Matt Nunez, the Senior Program Manager for the Colorado Office of Outdoor Recreation. So thank you for joining us today, Matt.
Thank you, Haley, and thank you all for having me. I have to give a special thank you to Guinevere, who has been a partner of mine on several different projects and, really helped to lead the charge on Colorado's end in getting us involved in this webinar series. So thank you for that. My name is Matt Nunez. I am a Senior Program Manager for the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office. We were the second OREC office of our kind established in the country. Wyoming was the first in, I believe, 2014. And we followed shortly after Utah was the first in 2014, and Colorado followed a year later in 2015. Currently, there are over 20 OREC offices nationwide. We are hoping to hit the 25 OREC office mark in the next year or two. So it's just been great to see the momentum of state governments across the country taking this industry seriously and recognizing the important role that it plays in our local economies. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I'm with the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office. We are a division of Colorado's Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And we provide a central point of contact, advocacy, and resources at the state level for OREC constituents throughout Colorado. Within OEDIT as a whole, our mission statement is to empower all to thrive within Colorado's economy. So we have a number of divisions within OEDIT that are working to support businesses, both on the general scale as well as in individual sectors. Some of those include the Colorado Tourism Office, the Colorado Cannabis Business Office, and a few others. And then we have, of course, our general programs, which will offer grants on a limited basis, as well as financing opportunities and incentive packages for businesses growing or expanding in Colorado. And a picture of our team. We're missing one member in that photo, but we are a small team of 5, and we think that we get a lot of work done for being only 5 folks. Next slide, please. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to talk about just 4 focus areas. My emphasis really is celebrating the little wins in Colorado's outdoor recreation industry. I will refer to a number of programs which my office administers. Number 1 is our grant-making programs, which have been fairly limited and were mostly pandemic related. Number 2 is our Rural Technical Assistance Program, which I partner with Guinevere on to provide community planning processes to small communities throughout Colorado. And then number 3 is the events which we help with or run ourselves. Number 1 being the Colorado Outdoor Industry Leadership Summit, which is my office's initiative, an annual gathering of 200 folks from across Colorado's outdoor recreation industry that takes place each fall. And the second one, which I'll discuss more in detail, is the Outside Festival, which had its inaugural year earlier this year in June. And we just announced is coming back for 2025. They just announced a great lineup of musical artists that will be headlining the Outside Festival in 2025. And there will be some more exciting announcements on speakers, films, and other ways that businesses can get involved to help grow Colorado's outdoor industry. So I'll discuss kind of how some of these projects came to fruition. Funding opportunities, however limited they may be, I will make reference to them and share some resources and recommendations on where to look for funding. And then really, regardless of whether you are representing a business, a nonprofit, a local government, or another community group, I'll provide some recommendations on how you can get more involved and find avenues to help your organization succeed. Next slide, please. So here are just a few quick little wins that our office has had in Colorado's outdoor recreation industry over the past few years. I had to come up with a little snappy title, but going from smallest to largest, I started with casinos to castles in Cripple Creek. If anyone's familiar with Cripple Creek, Colorado, it is a traditional mining town that transformed into very heavily gambling dependent. It is one of three locations in Colorado that has casinos. And so they have continued to rely very heavily on gaming and mining for their local economy. Despite its location, it is located on the backside of Pikes Peak on the other side or across from Colorado Springs, and surprisingly has not had many traditional outdoor recreation opportunities despite its advantageous location. For the past several years, there have been efforts to coordinate local landowners as well as community leaders such as the Pikes Peak Outdoor Recreation Alliance with U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, and other federal organizations to help develop more trail systems around Pikes Peak and connect Cripple Creek to the greater region through trails. That has met many challenges in the federal system, to no one's surprise. And a couple of years ago, through our Rural Technical Assistance Program, my office partnered with Cripple Creek. And this is a partnership with CSU, with Guinevere, as well as the University of Colorado at Boulder, their Masters of the Environment program, wherein students, graduate students exploring their Masters in the Environment serve as consultants and facilitators for communities that want to expand their economic development and outdoor recreation opportunities. So over the course of a few months, these students worked closely with a group of leaders in Cripple Creek and followed that up with a workshop in which they came out with a about 5-item action plan of how Cripple Creek could advance their outdoor recreation economy over the course of 12 to 24 months. That's where Guinevere and her CSU Extension team came in, where they have been doing a lot of follow-up with this community as well as many others we've worked with to ensure that progress is being made. And one giant win, which came as a result, was the Ice Castles, which is a national attraction that was formerly located in Dillon, Colorado, near many of our ski resorts, relocated to Cripple Creek, driving a lot of tourism up to that area around this time of year. And as a result, we actually saw a outdoor recreation business open a satellite location in Cripple Creek during that season to provide supplies and equipment to those who are going to the ice castles. So that's an example of a small win where we saw a outdoor recreation business identify a need in a small community that was missing outdoor recreation economy. And now we are seeing progress. Second, investing in OREC jobs. This is a little more vague, but I'll talk a little bit about the grant programs that my office has had. We received about $5.5 million in recovery funding through a couple of different sources, the primary one being the Economic Development Administration's Travel, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation program. And through that, we put out an application cycle for direct grants to businesses, nonprofits, government entities, and educational institutes. And over the past few years, have awarded that full $5.5 million to 72 recipients around the state, which has helped to create or retain roughly 670 jobs in Colorado's outdoor recreation industry. Now, I mentioned $5.5 million as being the total we awarded. We received requests between our multiple programs totaling $35 million. So there is a significant need. Unfortunately, we are not able to meet it, but armed with that data, we are going to the state legislature, the Joint Budget Committee here in Colorado, and making our case for why our office should receive a little bit more money to support outdoor recreation in Colorado. Additionally, we have seen this accomplished on the local level, working with economic development partners. One of my favorite examples is in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, another popular ski destination, where a significant outdoor recreation manufacturer really incubated and grew in the community and then was acquired and relocated to Denver. Ultimately a net neutral for the state, but it was a major impact for the community of Steamboat Springs, where the local workers had to make a decision of whether they want to stay there and find a new opportunity or remain with the company and relocate to Denver. We saw a great partnership between local leaders and specifically local economic development organization leaders in reaching out to those workers and telling them that they are a valued part of the community and they have resources available should they choose to remain in Steamboat. And as a result, we have seen a number, I want to say 5 or 6 at the moment, businesses launch in the absence of this company. We've seen their workers go on and create new outdoor industry startups of their own. Finally, the Outside Festival, which I mentioned, is a multi-day gathering and celebration of the outdoor industry, really nationwide. And this came to fill the void of Outdoor Retailer when they relocated to Utah a couple of years ago. And this past year, we saw, I believe, 17,000 attendees here in Denver, stimulating the local economy and offering new opportunities for businesses to connect, not just on the B2B level, which we saw at the larger trade show model, but in the direct-to-consumer model, where they were actually able to connect with consumers and sell their goods at the festival. Next slide, please. And we can kind of skip through these pretty quickly. This is just a picture of the ice castles up in Cripple Creek. The next one is a photo of one of our companies up in Steamboat Springs, Town Hall Company, which creates children's winter clothing. Next slide is just an example from the Outside Festival of what that looks like. So we encourage you all to attend May 31st and June 1st of this next year. So a little bit of how we got here. First, partnerships. Our office has limited resources. Despite being one of the oldest OREC offices, we are one of the worst funded OREC offices nationwide. And so with that in mind, we really have to leverage our voice and our reach across the state to lean on partners to get things done. And examples of this have been CSU in disseminating information, working with partners to identify avenues, and such as this webinar, working with CU Boulder to provide consulting and technical assistance to communities, working with Outside, a major media player, to launch an event attracting 17,000 people to Denver. Number 2, finding creative solutions to unfilled needs. Creative problem solving really is my joy in working in economic development. And a couple of examples are the Outside Festival, which filled the void of Outdoor Retailer, as well as our Rural Technical Assistance Program, which really came together through an innovative collaboration between us and CU and CSU to provide this program free to communities across the states. And we're working with 3 communities each year and are currently up to 9 communities. Listening to the community, our office makes a point of hearing from stakeholders across Colorado and across the outdoor recreation industry. And I'd even say that despite having some major industry players here in Colorado, such as the VF Corporation or Vail Resorts, we are even more connected and more in touch with our small business owners and our rural communities around the state, because we know that's where the heart of outdoor recreation is being done in Colorado. Alignment with other agencies. Jody is on the call representing Colorado Parks and Wildlife. We've worked together on a number of projects and maintained valuable relationships with CPW, as well as other agencies such as the Colorado Tourism Office. And then finally, celebrating small wins, such as trail openings in small communities, grant projects that are creating, just 1 or 2 jobs around the state, or collaboratives of businesses that are celebrating our outdoor industry. Here in Colorado, we have a group called Rural is Rad that is helping to do that and have become great partners of ours. Next slide. So as I've mentioned a few times, funding opportunities are limited, unfortunately. And in particular for businesses, it can be a real challenge to identify avenues for raising that capital. Here at OEDIT, the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, we do have a number of programs that are available for the right sector or for the right kind of industry niche. So for example, if you are working on manufacturing in an advanced industry, then you may qualify for special financing programs or even some direct-to-business grants. Um, Otherwise, if you are located within an enterprise zone, for example, which are designated distressed economic areas of Colorado, that will unlock special financing opportunities and tax credits for businesses to take advantage of. Overall, if you're interested in exploring funding avenues within OEDIT or more generally, I would encourage you to get in touch with our Rural Opportunity Office, which does have staff members across the state, or your local small business development center. And they have these in other states as well. I'm not sure where everyone is tuning in from, but the SBDC network is a great resource funded by the U.S. Small Business Administration that can provide free consulting services to businesses, regardless of the business phase that they're in. Finally, I just recommend Startup Colorado here in Colorado is a great resource for entrepreneurs and has resources for businesses at any phase from idea to launch to growth. And they have a fabulous funding database and some excellent networking opportunities as well. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, I don't want to steal any of Jody's thunder, but I'll just make mention of our Outdoor Equity Fund as well as the Trails Program grants. Great Outdoors Colorado, or GOCO, is great for community level projects and infrastructure projects throughout Colorado, funded by the Colorado Lottery. And then alternative lenders are available, such as B-Side Capital or Energize Colorado, if you're unable to secure financing from a bank. Finally, foundations, of course, are available for nonprofit organizations here in Colorado. Some of the largest include the Daniels Fund, El Pomar Foundation, and the Colorado Health Foundation. And next slide. So just some recommendations of what you can do next. I've touched on much of this already. Get to know your local economic developers, your small business development center, educational institutions. They're great partners that can provide a wealth of knowledge both on the faculty and staff level as well as the student level. And then those alternative lending sources. Engage with Startup Colorado, the Outdoor Industry Association, and ORR, the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, are two industry promoting organizations. CPW's Regional Partnerships Initiative, which Jody will talk about, and then the Outside Festival, please come attend. And then celebrate every dollar raised, no matter how small, every new experience that you provide to somebody in the outdoors. And then the fact that we get to work in this industry and, get to be so passionate about what we do. Next slide. That wraps me up. You can connect with me or with our office. The QR code on the left is a link to our office's website. And then on the right is my personal business card if you'd like to reach out to me at all. So thank you all, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. And also thank you for helping us in creating this webinar series, your valuable input and making all of this happen. So thank you for joining us today as a panelist, as well as being a part of this whole webinar series as well. And so before we move into the second poll, I'm going to turn it over to Guinevere real quick to give us a quick summary of your guys' answers from the first question we had before Matt.
Yeah, so our question was, what do you hope to get out of this webinar? And a lot of it was discovering more about outdoor recreation opportunities, really getting to know this kind of industry, and then some ideas for alternative programming and just general knowledge about outdoor recreation industry.
Great. Thank you for that update, Guinevere. She will be dropping the link into the chat again if she hasn't already, but again, there is a QR code. So this is our second interactive poll. So we are asking you participants as well, what challenges or successes has your community had in developing outdoor recreation? And so again, please feel free to fill out your answers, but we are going to move into our next presenter. So I'm going to pass it over to Michael Kuseik, who is the Executive Director of Wyoming Pathways. Thank you, Michael, for for being here today. Very excited to have you and listen to what you have to say.
Thanks, Haley. It's a pleasure to be here. And for everyone who's on the call, we really appreciate your time to share what we're working on. Hopefully folks can learn something from it, and we can see more projects happen across the West and the country. Want to thank Haley and Gwennifer for organizing this and answering all the questions I had throughout the period leading up. Very helpful, and acknowledge other panelists for making this possible as well. So Wyoming Pathways is a not-for-profit based in Wyoming. There's two of us. We live in Lander, Wyoming. We have a quarter-time person who lives in Colorado and helps us with federal grant interface. And we cover the entire state for projects related to active transportation. Think about safe crossings at schools, in-town pathways, bike lanes on streets, et cetera. And lately, we've really been busy and robust in a robust way with building recreational trail on public lands. So I want to talk to you about that today as a function of, how do we get all these requests and projects done? What are the first steps? What are the second steps? What are the barriers? What are some things that have worked well for others? And again, we're in our 12th year. This year, we are working with 9 different communities throughout Wyoming. So the two of us drive quite a bit. We get to know our lovely state, which we both love very much. And just some background, we've had a survey on our website since 2021. Since then, 47 municipalities in Wyoming have reached out to us saying they want some form or fashion of active transportation project or trails. We estimate that if we were to build all those projects out, it would be about $145 million right now. And I don't know if you know about the lovely tax structure in the state of Wyoming, but it's a great place to live if you don't like to pay very many taxes. So we have a financial challenge to find the money to build these out. And we just keep going until we get there. Next slide, please. All right, this is our process model. This is something that we came up with when folks were wondering, or perhaps we discovered it because we thought it would be better to give folks up front, here's how we get things done. We can't skip any of these steps, but people were also wondering, how do you do what we do? So that first slide picture was a trail built on a place called Johnny Behind the Rocks, a BLM zone outside of Lander. It was built by a guy named Alan Mandel, who's from Lander, and he's recently won the award for best digger at Red Bull Rampage 2 years ago. And he is a runner-up almost every year. He builds for pro mountain bikers around the country. But because he's from here, he helped us with the community desire piece. He was able to, interest folks in a brand new type of trail. And our land manager there, Jared Oakleaf, was totally excited to have Alan, who formerly built illegal trails in the BLM, come back and do one that was legal and put in a trail that's literally something you'd see at a bike park in British Columbia or Northwest United States. And so that kind of a thing really checks that community desire box. But like I said, there's 47 communities across the state, at least that many. Those are just the ones who've gone to our survey who have a desire for something like this. And so, as Matt noted, and I'm sure all the rest of us will agree, you have to have local partners. You have to have people to help carry water for you. I would encourage you as a side note to really get involved with your elected officials. When I go to legislature in Cheyenne or county commissioners meeting, it's obvious that I'm going to say, yes, build more trails. But if you can get what we call an unnatural ally, someone who doesn't even have a mountain bike or even go to the trail, see the value in them and start to lobby for them, that's a critical piece. And I'm going to walk you through this model with some slides coming up. And certainly I'm happy to send this to you if it's helpful. There's a lot of roadblocks that can happen here. There's a lot of reasons in this model where you might just say now's not the right time. And we can get into that. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we do, and this is actually in partnership with two wonderful people from the Ruckelshaus Institute at University of Wyoming, who's a tremendous partner of ours. We do community charrettes. And so that's more or less a French word that means bring your ideas to the marketplace. And we hold charrettes across the state. And we invite everybody. We invite the grazing lessee. We invite the motorized person. We invite the person who wants the landscape left alone. You can't get enough input soon enough and regularly enough. You have to do it in a way where nobody can say, I had no idea you're going to do this. We advertise in newspapers and on radio and on websites. We put flyers up. That way everybody has a chance. And so this was a charrette we hosted in Pinedale a couple of years ago. We estimate around 60 people gave up their Friday afternoon and most of their Saturday to talk to us about what they wanted to see happen in their public landscapes nearby. And that gives you a really solid footing. So it's not just a bunch of folks who want to go out and shred, discussing what to do with public lands that belong to everybody, but everybody gets to be heard and have their fears allayed, bring new ideas to the space. and it produces a report. One of the things we tell communities when we do these meetings is that this is not a solutions meeting. This is getting all the ideas out. And that's a really useful tool. We've had a lot of places across the West, and certainly in my hometown of Lander, where projects almost got to the finish line, and it caused such a disaster here in Lander that people were putting up yard signs for and against a project, and it's still torn us apart to this date, and that was during COVID. So challenging things can happen, and they can also be avoided. Next slide, please. So this is a tricky one. If you're a trail user, mountain biker, hiker, runner, horseback rider, what have you, and again, we're going to talk non-motorized today, you're going to find trail systems all over the country. Most of those were built before we have proper trail science, like how trails shed water best and how to make sure they're sustainable. Most of them were built, or many of them were built before we had the NEPA considerations, like are we disturbing migration corridor problems? Are we getting into culturally significant sites for Native peoples? Are we damaging archaeological sites? And so these social trails, as we call them, are trails that users built, are all over the West. They're all over the mountain landscapes and the BLM landscapes, and I'm sure in other parts of the country. Sometimes the land manager has to use the scant dollars they have to close those trails out rather than evaluate a landscape for new trails. So we get to know our land managers and we build relationships with them, and we get how stressed out they can be in terms of staffing and dollars. I live in the Wind Rivers. We have 300 miles of trail in the Wind River range. 80% of that is in wilderness. And if you've ever done any maintenance in wilderness, you have to go in on a donkey with a crosscut saw, more or less. You're not bringing in a chainsaw. You're not taking an ATV in there. And the reason those trails are so important, you know, we're known as a horse forest. Colloquially, it's even on their t-shirt. The Shoshone is a horse forest. We have a lot of folks who buy permits and run businesses guiding people on those trails. So the forest has an obligation to get those open. So all the front country stuff that's on public lands can take a long time. So those relationships are key. Let's say you have community desire. Let's say you have a land manager who wants to build trail. They're like, yes, my community wants this. We have the right space, but they don't have any NEPA staff. In many Western states, like in Wyoming, those NEPA staff are often dedicated to oil and gas and extractive industry purposes. So I can hear I can go to a land manager and say, look, we have money right now to build trails. He's like, well, the NEPA folks are 3 years booked out. I'm like, we're not going to have that money in 3 years. So a lot of headaches, a lot of frustration. I bring this up because it's really important to know when and where to dedicate your precious time. And most importantly, make sure you keep those land managers as allies. Just because they can't do what you want, be the person defending them in the community. There's so few that call up their district ranger and say, hey, you're doing a great job today. You know, mostly it's a lot of complaints. And so be the person, if you're in the project world or the you want to have projects, keep that relationship alive with your land manager and be aware that readiness is key. Next slide, please. So funding sources, you know, it's the $1 million question, pun intended. You know, we're a small not-for-profit. That's Grace, that's me before, when I didn't have a beard. I looked a little bit younger, but we go out and we do it all. We write grants, tons of grants. Again, we look at those grants and we say, how complicated is this grant and what's the likelihood we're going to get it? And does it really check the box? One of the things that probably doesn't need to be said, but avoid mission drift. Don't go after money where you have to bend what you want to get done just to get money. Keep good relationships with your donors. Nothing like a handwritten letter with a personalized note on it to really say thank you to a donation. You know, nothing like holding an event where you thank your donors either, and update them. There's organizations across Wyoming that, you know, will travel all over in the winter, summer, spring, and fall to set up a table at a brew pub and say, we're going to talk to you today about what we do and get your questions. We literally do coffee can fundraisers. There's parts of our state that are referred to by region instead of town, like the Bighorn Basin. And we ask those towns to support each other, like put a can up at your bike shop and say, we're trying to build trails in Lovell. Well, Grable and Cody and Powell and Meeteetse and Worland, they're all going to use it. So let's spread the word. And then if you have a billionaire relative, the problem is solved. So let's not even worry about that. But these are some slides of what we did. This bottom left picture, we created a film on how we get trails built in Fremont County. The local bike shop knows they're going to benefit from having more trails. They gave us the space. They bought the beer. They paid for the food. Both of those pictures in the bottom, throughout the evening, we had about 200 people. The line was around the block in Lander. It was a great evening. We showed our film. We raised a bunch of money. We educated folks. We made sure they feel like they're part of the process. So the funding is key. Right now, I'm in a situation where if I had $750,000, I could complete a 23-mile trail system in Northeast Wyoming, but there are no funding streams that are right now available for $700,000. So we might piecemeal that out 50 grand at a time. I guess I'll make a point here too. You probably know this, or maybe maybe it's natural to think about, but if we just add 1 or 2 miles here or there, you sometimes get the opposite effect of what you're looking for. If we build a new mile of trail at JBR, everyone's going to come and ride it. It's going to make it way more congested. But a mile isn't enough to decongest or decrease trail conflict. And so we have to think about, does it make sense to open up a system 1 mile at a time? Or is it better to wait? So those are key considerations. Next slide, please. One of the things we do that's unique, we found out, we thought we were unique in Wyoming. We presented last year at the Vernal Mountain West Trails Conference. We're going to try to go this year in Kanab, but we might be the only group who does this. We project manage. So we're like a contractor for a house. We get permission, we raise the money, we hire the builder, we put it out to bid, we vet all of the bidders, then we oversee it. We make sure it's done how it's supposed to be. We pay all the bills. So the project management piece is key. One of the things that we do, and I would encourage anybody who works on public lands to do, is think about, can I build this so it's sustainable? Land managers don't have staff for maintenance. Can you get an MOU with the local cycling club to provide maintenance on trails? Those are the kinds of things to think about as a project manager. And so we're making several trips out to the zone throughout the project to make sure the work's being done professionally. Next slide, please, and I'll hurry it along. Community partners. We have many across the state on this call and even on this panel. People like Laurel Stevens, Amy Crawford with the Office of Outdoor Rec. They're invaluable partners. And as Matt was mentioning, keeping those relationships alive and vibrant, saying thank yous, offering support, because those people are eyes and ears across the state, letting us know what's needed, what's working, what's not working. This is an outdoor charrette we had in Cody with our partner and engineering company who wants to make that town safer for bikes and pedestrians. Next slide. Again, we oversee the construction. We're out building at a BLM zone, JBR, and another trail, talking with the builder, checking in, making sure we're following all the rules, not destroying the environment, et cetera, rehabilitating places that were dug up to use for materials. So the land manager's happy too. Next slide, please. Maintenance plan, as I mentioned, this is a cycling club helping us do some maintenance on a trail we built. We also have MOUs with most of our builders that, other than an act of God, there's a 5-year agreement that they'll come back and do any maintenance on failed trail sections. Next slide, please. And then we like to pay the bills and celebrate. It's really important, whether it's a small thing or a big thing, to remind community members that their time, donations, energy, and efforts matter. We find that everywhere across the state, people donate cookies and coffee and beer and snacks and giveaways and raffle items. If you ask and cultivate relationships and connect the dots to folks to say, because you did this, your town is healthier, your quality of life is higher, more employees want to live here, et cetera, et cetera. That's all I have. I've probably gone over time like I like to do because I like to talk too much, but thanks for the time and I look forward to questions later.
Yes, thank you so much, Michael. You guys have done some great work around Wyoming, so thank you for being here today. So before we move on to our next poll question, I will also turn it back over to Guinevere to summarize our second poll question about any successes or challenges that you guys found with outdoor recreation in your communities.
Yeah, no submissions. So I think that does go to the first polling question, though, that a lot of people are here to learn. So we can move on to the next one, which is provided here in the link or in the chat, the links in the chat.
Yes, so please feel free to add your answers in there. We are asking, what are resources that you need to accomplish your outdoor recreation development goals? If you could have a toolkit, what would you need in that toolkit to kind of get these ideas to that fruition? And so with that, we will continue on to our next speaker, Jody Kennedy. And so with that, I will turn it on over to you, Jody.
Thanks, Haley, and thanks, Guinevere. I appreciate this opportunity to be here. Oh yeah, I'm Jody Kennedy. I'm the Regional Partnerships Program Manager for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I imagine most of you are familiar with CPW. We manage over 960 species in the state of Colorado. We have 43 state parks. We have over 360 state wildlife areas. And we also are committed to providing outdoor recreation opportunities. And I'm going to dig today specifically into two programs, Colorado's Outdoor Regional Partnerships Initiative and the Colorado's Outdoor Strategy that I hope you will find useful. These are relatively new initiatives for CPW and a new model and approach, I think, to engaging communities and conservation and recreation planning and management. And we really hope to continue growing them into the future and see them provide a model for Wyoming and other states across the country. So I've been working in management for a long time and also for nonprofit organizations, really focused on outdoor recreation and conservation. And I will say in my experience, three things that I've learned that are really essential to successful projects are first, partnerships, which you've heard both Matt and Michael talk about today. The second is really understanding the landscape and the communities who live there and the values of those communities and using that to help inform your project objectives. And then the third thing I would say is just really information and knowledge and data to help ensure that that project is going to achieve those objectives. And I think when you've got these three things, then you're setting yourself up for success in getting your projects funded. And so with that, I'm going to talk more about our programs in Colorado that I think really center around those three ideas. So next slide. So this is really just to help kind of, provide some context for what we're dealing with in Colorado. We've had pretty consistent population growth in this state and definitely a lot of growth in outdoor recreation use and access and growth, I would say, in use kind of all year round and further into the backcountry, which on one hand is fantastic because we love to see people outdoors and we want to connect more people to the outdoors. It also causes challenges for natural resources and for the user experience. Another challenge that we're dealing with is just all the pressures on natural resources. So it's not just recreation, but there's a lot of competing pressures that have impacts population growth and development, loss of habitat. And then a third big element is climate change and just increased flooding and droughts and wildfires. And this picture is of the sand dunes in the San Luis Valley in Colorado, and it shows a river that fluctuates seasonally anyway, pretty much dries up by most August, most years. But with climate change now, it's just less predictable and you're not sure what's going to happen within that river system. And so these are some of the things that we're dealing with. Another important aspect that's been a driver behind these initiatives is the regional differences across Colorado, recognizing that depending on where you are, the situation looks really different. So there are some places in the state that have a lot of recreation pressure and a lot of demand, and they're trying to figure out how to manage that use. There are other places in the state that have a lot of public lands and a lot of resources and not a lot of visitors, and are thinking about how to expand that infrastructure and create more opportunities and draw more people to those places. And then we have other places in the state where you have a lot of private land, and they too are trying to think about how they connect people to outdoor recreation experiences. So it really varies depending on where you are, which has been a key driver of this initiative. So with that, you can go to the next slide. So this is kind of an overarching kind of why, purpose, where we're trying to go with the Regional Partnerships Initiative and Colorado's Outdoor Strategy. We're trying to build capacity, bring tools and resources to be strategic, and really to sustain Colorado's love of the outdoors and to strengthen our communities and partner organizations. And with that, you can go to the next slide. So Colorado's Outdoor Regional Partnerships Initiative, it launched with an executive order from our Governor Polis in 2020, and it really is striving toward three primary goals. First and fundamentally is to ensure our land, water, and wildlife resources thrive while also providing these really high quality and equitable experiences to Colorado's outdoors. The second is to convene broad interest groups and sectors and really support partnerships and a collaborative process. And then the third is to think about how we can support regional collaboration and planning while also thinking about a larger statewide vision and a statewide framework for advancing kind of larger statewide objectives. So if you could go to the next slide. So here's a map of our regional partnerships right now in the state. So we launched our first grant cycle in 2021. And since then, we've awarded about $5 million to 20 coalitions around the state. They cover about 75% of Colorado. We really hope to cover 100% of Colorado. So we're doing a lot of outreach in the northeast corner and other places on this map where you see gaps. But essentially, we provide grant funding to support capacity building, to support staff for these coalitions, and to support planning and any sort of research they may need, or groundwork or outreach, community development that they need to really help kind of develop a conservation and recreation vision that meets the needs for those regions. And we are really pushing folks to kind of come up with a strategic vision and plan, recognizing that once those plans are completed, then we intend to roll funding into project implementation and really trying to identify, what are those win-win projects that folks are feeling good about across interest areas with these partnerships that are informed by knowledge. And, we really want to help kind of tie those to funding opportunities and help support those projects into the future. So you can go to the next slide. So this brings us to Colorado's outdoor strategy. So Colorado's outdoor strategy is still in development, and this is essentially the larger statewide vision and action strategy that will help inform and provide a framework for the regional partnerships. It's also bigger than regional partnerships and really intended to support, all of our recreation industry partners, our conservation partners, anyone who's kind of working in the outdoor space. Colorado's outdoor strategy has three primary goals. It's climate resilient conservation and restoration, exceptional sustainable outdoor recreation, and then coordinated planning and funding. And I know that this slide is probably hard to read, but really trying to get at ensuring habitats are resilient and connected, supporting community benefits from ecosystem services, really getting at that climate piece and how climate intersects with recreation and with planning and funding. And then also thinking about what are those exceptional outdoor recreation experiences and how do we support those moving forward, recognizing how they're connected to the planning and funding landscape and to climate resilient conservation. So with that, you can go to the next slide. So what does the strategy do? And I'm going to get into more detail specifically on kind of the data and the tools that it provides. But essentially this plan, again, it's draft, it's being developed through a large collaborative effort in Colorado. The convening partners that have kind of been stewarding this process forward so far are the CPW, the Department of Natural Resources, Great Outdoors Colorado, and the governor's office. And, we've sort of been shepherding this process forward, but really there's a much larger group of stakeholders. And we have a steering and a technical committee who have been really essential in helping us put this strategy together. And the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office and Matt have been really involved and have been a really key player in kind of helping to shape this strategy and identify the needs and the elements that are going to be most useful to our partners in Colorado. So when this strategy is completed, it's going to provide resources to support coordination and alignment across planning. It's going to establish milestones to plan for and track progress. It's going to establish planning and management tools, which I'm going to speak more to in a minute. And then it's also going to really try to hone in on a strategic funding plan and think about how we can tap into existing funding sources and align them to strategic priorities, as well as look at new funding opportunities and just identifying funding challenges overall. The strategy is regionally rooted. So again, it's really intended to support kind of these regional partnerships and their efforts and just recognize the different community needs across the state. And then it's not intended to be prescriptive. This is not intended to like tell folks what to do, but it's really intended to put resources and tools out there to help inform collaborative work and be kind of a starting place and a launch pad to make us all more effective and efficient. So you can go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit just about data mapping tools and resources. Again, this kind of gets at, how do we find information to help inform our projects and the work that we're doing so that they can be successful and being implemented and getting community support and in getting funding. So you can go to the next slide. So this is tiny and really hard to see. But again, the strategy is still draft. It will be released in 2025. And what you all can expect to see is a centralized kind of resources landing page toolkit that'll then launch you to all these other resources. And some of those resources will include a lot of the different plans that are out there. I know CPW is about to launch our statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. We have a state wildlife action plan. There's a climate roadmap. We have a state water plan. The Outdoor Rec Office has a strategic plan, and then there's a destination stewardship plan. There's a lot of plans and a lot of resources, and so this hub is really intended to make it easier to find those and to be able to filter through them to tailor to what you're looking for and what's going to be most helpful to you. In addition, the resources is going to include an equity, diversity, and inclusion toolkit, really providing kind of resources to support any kind of work in that space, whether it's planning and management or project development. In addition, it has resources for engaging with tribal governments and indigenous communities in the state, and really excited to be able to roll out that resource. We've just heard from a lot of folks that they would like kind of a guide, and that has been developed in close collaboration with Colorado's Ute Mountain Ute Tribe and Southern Ute Indian Tribe, as well as some really fantastic consultants. So you can go to the next slide. So this is the data dashboard. This is going to be another tool that's going to roll out with Colorado's outdoor strategy. And essentially what this does is like provide kind of a snapshot of how are we doing on these larger indicators for outdoor recreation and conservation in the state. And you're looking at a snapshot. And again, this is draft. This is for the state of Colorado. You will also be able to go into this dashboard and click on particular counties and then dig into those different counties and kind of see like what are the recreation assets there, what are the needs there. A new tool that we're been working with is a mapping tool that looks at access to parks, trails, and open space, and it kind of maps out communities in the distance they have to travel, whether it's a 10-minute walk or a 10-minute drive. This is in partnership with Trust for Public Lands. So lots of different data that we're kind of pulling from to inform this dashboard, and again, excited to see that roll out. So you can go to the next slide. And this is my last data slide. This touches on a spatial platform, which is another important resource that's coming out of this. There's so much spatial data out there, and trying to figure out where to find it or what it will tell you or how it can inform a project or a planning effort. So working with Colorado Natural Heritage Program to develop a conservation or a Colorado Data Explorer kind of hub where you can go in and look at a lot of different data sets, including a conservation summary map that pulls up conservation values at different sites, the Trust for Public Lands Recreation Access Map that I talked about a minute ago. Also, the Nature Conservancy has a resilient and connected landscapes, thinking about climate change. COMAP really digs into kind of land management and land jurisdiction. Is it public land? What are the different management jurisdictions in that particular area? And then hopefully many of you are familiar with COTRAX, which is Colorado's trail app that maps all of our trails in the state and is a resource that we put a lot of energy into, also to provide just updated information on trails so you know what's allowed there, and then also just if there's any restrictions, whether it's from a wildfire or a seasonal closure for wildlife. So these are some of the resources and tools that are really intended to support our partners, and they will be available for everyone. And again, you can expect to see those in 2025. And then you can go to the next slide. So just to wrap up and tie it back to funding opportunities, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has a number of funding opportunities. We have the Outdoor Equity Grant Program that Matt touched on. We offer snow, non-motorized and motorized trail grants. We have snowmobile grants. We offer grants under our Land and Water Conservation Fund that support recreation projects and conservation projects. We have shooting range grants. We have a fishing is fun grant opportunity that's open right now. I encourage you all to go to our website. You can just search for grant programs, and there is a dedicated page that lists all of our grants, and then you can find kind of the timing for those, when they open, the requirements, the application process. And also there are the Regional Partnership Initiative grants as well that I touched on earlier, and certainly happy to be a resource and provide more information. So that pretty much wraps up. You can go to my last slide. I just want to thank everyone again for your time and this opportunity. And, you know, I guess just emphasize that Colorado's outdoor strategy and regional partnerships are intended to support projects and intended to support a process that builds those partnerships and kind of collaboration and incorporates knowledge and information and community values. And we have lead contacts for each of our regional partnerships around the state. I'm happy to share those information if anyone's in Colorado and wants to figure out the partnership in your area and attend those meetings and plug into that process. It's a great opportunity, I think, to build those connections and partnerships, as well as think about the vision and priorities for that region. And also happy to keep everyone posted as Colorado's outdoor strategy rolls out and make sure those resources are easily accessible. And we will be providing trainings on those as well, particularly for the data tools that can be a little more complicated. So with that, I'll wrap up and thanks again.
Thank you so much, Jody. And thank you for sharing those wonderful resources. I know even in Wyoming, I'm very excited to see how that works for all of you guys. So thank you for being here. And so before we jump into our last interactive poll question, I will again turn it over to Guinevere for our third question. I think we got it figured out, so hopefully that there were a few more answers this time.
Yeah, thanks to whoever put that in the chat. I just wanted to wrap up the resources that you guys need is funding. We all know that's an issue. Community involvement in how-tos, basically. Some support from state offices and legislators was another one. And then some comments about engaging communities and those folks who are like, I just want to recreate, I don't want to engage. So those are some things that you guys, some resources on how to have found. I'm going to open the poll and then I'll put it in the chat so we don't run into the problem like last time.
And so again, you should be able to see that next question coming up soon. Our last interactive poll question is, how can universities and extension support communities looking to implement, add, or expand outdoor recreation? Again, a large part of this webinar series is coming from Colorado State University as well as University of Wyoming, and seeing how we can best support you all in these efforts in your communities as well. So please feel free to fill out that poll question as we move on to our last panelists, Laurel Stevens. Thank you so much, Laurel, for being here today. And with that, I will pass it on over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Laurel Stevens. I am the Communications and Marketing Manager for Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources. Prior to my current role, I served as our agency's outreach coordinator for the Wyoming Office of Outdoor Recreation. Our agency works with the University of Wyoming on a variety of projects and initiatives, such as this webinar series throughout the year. We're greatly appreciative of their continued partnership and support, as well as our relationships with and the work of fellow OREC offices and members of the Confluence of States. So thank you for being here as well. I'm looking forward to talking to you all about some of our robust programs and initiatives within our agency that support outdoor recreation across the state. This is such an important industry on a local, state, and federal level, and it's always really encouraging to see so many of you interested in ensuring that it will continue to thrive for years to come. Next slide, please. During my presentation, I will briefly touch on who we are as an agency, what some of our outdoor recreation programs are, and some initiatives and resources that they offer that can potentially support your role in outdoor recreation. Next slide. The Wyoming Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources is a quality of life agency that houses many programs that aim to provide Wyoming's residents and visitors with a variety of opportunities and experiences to enjoy our arts, parks, history, and the outdoors. As you can see from the organizational chart, our agency has 2 divisions, and today I will primarily be focusing on programs under the State Parks Division. Next slide, please. So why are states like Wyoming investing in outdoor recreation at the state level, and what role does our agency play? Here you can see that according to the latest report from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, in 2023, Wyoming's outdoor recreation economy grew to $2.2 billion, a record year, accounting for 4.1% of the state's GDP and 15.8 thousand jobs. We've been trending in this direction for several years, and as Wyoming's outdoor recreation sector continues to expand, our agency realizes that strategic investments and development are crucial for protecting and conserving our natural resources and improving recreation experiences and opportunities on our public lands. Next slide. So while each state's office or division of outdoor recreation is housed and operates a little differently within their state government, we all strive to accomplish similar goals in our work, which can include conservation and stewardship, education, workforce training, economic development, and public health and wellness. The Wyoming Office of Outdoor Recreation has a variety of programs and initiatives under our purview. However, there are a few I wanted to highlight with you all today. Currently, we have a non-motorized trails program responsible for maintaining and constructing non-motorized trails on state land. Our non-motorized trails program is also available to connect local trails groups with necessary resources, consultation, and partnerships. In recent years, our office has also acquired funding that has allowed us to offer a few different one-time funding opportunities, such as the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation ARPA grant program, which has awarded over $20.3 million for 21 outdoor recreation projects across the state. These funds were made available through the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA acronym. The full impact of these grants will be realized in the coming years as the recreational projects are completed, and we're really very excited that the University of Wyoming's Worth Initiative will conduct an ongoing economic impact study of these awarded projects. Recent historic advances also excite us for the state's future of outdoor recreation funding. In March of 2024, Governor Gordon signed a bill that established governance for the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust Fund, which was signed into law in 2023. Beginning in July of 2026, the fund will support outdoor recreation infrastructure, planning, and access projects through recreational grants, ensuring a steady stream of funding to help communities with improved outdoor recreation amenities. Next slide, please. Our office currently facilitates 8 outdoor recreation collaboratives. These are community-driven groups that bring together locals who love to play outside, nonprofits, business leaders, conservation groups, federal and state agencies, elected officials, and so many more to identify and prioritize opportunities for growth and enhancement for sustainable outdoor recreation in their area. Each collaborative operates based on a charter signed by the original members. However, the public is welcome to attend collaborative meetings and events, and if interested, can choose to move forward with joining the group formally. Earlier this year, the office received $1.68 million from the Wyoming Office of Tourism to support innovative project ideas arising directly from the 8 outdoor recreation collaborative efforts and planning meetings. This was a one-time grant that awarded funding to 14 projects across the state, emerging from these really interesting and neat groups. Next slide, please. So the Wyoming Trails program collaborates with various land management agencies to maintain and develop trails, primarily focusing on federal lands. Notably, the program does not own property or directly manages trails, but provides funding, labor, and equipment support. The Trails program's funding mainly comes from fees collected from motorized users and vehicle registrations, as it oversees the snowmobile and off-road vehicle programs in the state. Guidance for the Wyoming Trails program is provided by the Trails Advisory Council, whose primary tasks include advising on the management of trail funds and making recommendations for grant fund distributions. Here you can see a very brief overview of the partnership grants offered to land managers and NGOs through the Trails program. Next slide, please. In addition to the Wyoming Trails program's partnership grants, there are various additional funding opportunities available through Wyoming State Parks, historic sites, and trails. The Recreational Trails Program funds the development of maintenance of recreational trails for both motorized and non-motorized use. The Land and Water Conservation Fund is designed to develop and development and acquisition, of public outdoor recreation lands and facilities. And then we do have a motorboat grant program, which offers funding for improvements to public boating facilities across the state. Next slide, please. And so with that, I just want to thank you all again for allowing me to give you a very brief overview of some of our agency's programs, initiatives, and resources. I hope that some of you listening in can benefit from the information provided. And if I can assist you further in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out and I can connect you with the proper member of our team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurel, for joining us today and sharing all of that wonderful information. And thank you again to you and the wonderful staff at the Wyoming Office of Outdoor Recreation and your partnership with creating this webinar series, your support and helping us get to where we are today, as well as your continued partnership with the university. So thank you. With that, we are going to be moving into our Q&A session. So we have about 20-ish minutes left. I know some people might be having to head out. Don't worry, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available to you within the next week or so on the website that you registered on. So if you have to head out early, don't worry, you will not miss the Q&A session. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we are going to open it up. So these are questions that were submitted during the registration from people joining in on our webinar today. You all have such a wealth of knowledge and so many different resources and tips and tricks that I am going to open this up to a great group discussion. Hopefully we can get through quite a few of these. I don't know if we'll hit all of the questions, but we'll get through as many as we can. So the first one that I want to open up to the group, whoever would like to jump in and take this, is one of our first questions, and it is, how do we apply these skills to our local communities? How do we create a business from scratch to support our ideas? Yep, feel free to go, Laurel.
I'll hop in. I would say to be aware of and take advantage of local and state resources and programs that are available to you. Are there economic impact studies that have happened in your area that identify gaps, and how can you fill those? Become engaged in support and knowledge systems like our outdoor recreation collaboratives, and research and apply for small business grants through entities like the Wyoming Business Council, your Office of Tourism, local chambers, and DMOs if available to you.
Great, thank you.
I would echo what Laurel said, really pay attention to what the gaps and needs are within your community, learn what the priorities are for local leaders, and how you can fill those needs. And then, as I mentioned during my presentation, connect with your small business development centers. Here in Colorado, it's a free resource. I'm sure it is in many other states. It's a free resource for businesses. I've gone through it on my own for my own little side hustles, and it really is a wealth of knowledge that is made accessible for everyone.
Great, thank you, Matt.
I think Matt and Laurel covered it really well. I do think there are a lot of resources out there to support small businesses. And so looking for those and encouraging folks to connect and find those. And I think too, in Colorado, again, thinking about the regional differences, and every community is different. And so where you want to locate to, I think has a big impact in kind of understanding those communities and what the opportunities are there.
And I just add to finish it up. I think what I talked about is so key. We see it across the state of Wyoming and Western states, especially. It's about relationships. So when you're looking at applying skills to your communities, think broader than just the interest group, think broader than the project, think about how the project will have an impact downstream. Lander, Wyoming had 11 businesses started by someone who moved here to go rock climbing. And those 11 businesses brought $17.5 million to the economy in 2019. And they employ 115 full-time equivalents. And so when you have data also in hand, if you can collect data, or if you can talk with folks about the potential for growth because of expanding outdoor rec, those things will work in your favor. And then just don't give up. If you keep going, you'll eventually get there.
Great, thank you all. I think this next question is something that a lot of people are interested in, probably why a lot of people are listening in today. And all of you are connected to a lot of different, opportunities for funding or know of a bunch of different things. So this next question is, are there any grants or funding opportunities that we should be looking out for?
Sign up for newsletters, social media of all the various state agencies. That's typically where they'll announce their programs when they come available. But also check with your local partners, your local municipalities, counties. Sometimes there are small grant programs available, or various financing programs that will come available.
There are some mountain bike companies and gear companies who have granting programs because they know if there's more amenities, they're going to sell more gear. So sniff around in those zones, and you might, I think like Matt was saying, they may not be big dollar grants, but they could be 5 to 15 to 20,000, enough to get you started, get some attention going, more enthusiasm, creates more interest.
I think we all went over, several past, current, future funding opportunities that are just even available amongst us. And I know that there are, many, many others out there, like Michael said. It's just a matter of ensuring you and your project are eligible for said funding. And I know that regulations, rules, etc., can seem daunting. But I know within our agency, our grants team that is responsible for the oversight and execution of various grant programs are highly knowledgeable and are very willing to assist you through that process, even if it's just, the initial inquiry or in the application phase, whatever that might look like. But for those folks on the call that are in Wyoming, I talked a little bit about the trust fund, and a lot of people are probably aware, but have shovel-ready projects in the pipeline for that trust fund in 2026, keeping in mind that, partnerships and support, like we've all mentioned, will really be key to acquiring some of that funding.
Yeah, I second those comments. The only thing I would add from the perspective of regional partnerships and Colorado's outdoor strategy is to encourage folks to think about, what are kind of the bigger community values? Again, like where are you intending to locate and what's happening in that community and what are the bigger community values? Because I think there's just a lot of opportunity there to connect and network and understand where these communities are going and thinking in Colorado where I just think there's a lot of opportunity to grow small businesses, support small businesses, thinking about meeting the needs and interests of outdoor recreation and supporting that economy, which we know is continuing to grow and strong. And I think the more you can think about how your business plugs in with those larger community needs, which could be so many different things in terms of providing jobs or connecting to things that are happening on the ground, like maybe local agriculture or training and opportunities for students. Like, there's just so many ways, I think, to plug in to kind of a larger vision for those regions that I think can just add momentum and maybe just open new opportunities and new doors and bring, I think, strength to proposals to those different grant programs.
Great. Thank you all. There are a lot of different avenues to getting these ideas up and going. All of these people, these organizations are great, people to get connected to start figuring out all of these different avenues for funding and those kinds of things as well. So a next question that we have is, how can businesses or organizations provide input for state funding priorities?
Well, I can start just because there is an opportunity right now in Colorado with the development of the outdoor strategy and regional partnerships in this phase where they're planning. I think there's a lot of opportunity to just show up in those spaces and communicate within those forums what your priorities are and what you're thinking. I think having an industry voice especially is really important in those conversations, and thinking about how recreation projects and conservation values and those things kind of intersect with the community economic opportunities and jobs and new businesses and small businesses. Like, how do those things tie together? I think is just really valuable. And so I encourage folks to think about connecting with a regional partnership if you're in Colorado, or thinking about connecting with other partners if you're in another state. And then we're really looking at how do we align funding opportunities and how do we, as a state, provide more efficiencies and make that just a more kind of holistic, easier process for applicants that work toward these larger strategic visions at the same time.
Yeah, and if I could jump in on that too, I think just do the bucket work of attending city council meetings, county commissioner meetings, getting to know your legislators. At least in Wyoming, it's really a citizen legislature where we have folks who don't have staff. They aren't paid to be there. They get 350 to 500 bills a session. They don't even have time to read them. But if you're spending time building relationships and talking about your project and how, once again, this is so key, just think really broad, really expansive, not contracted on, well, I'm a climber, I want more bolted routes. Like, what does that do to the economy? What does that do to quality of life for citizens? What does that do for safety? All the things that legislators and decision makers are all about. But then you bonus that by, I already have a relationship with them because I go and I get to know them. I invite them out for coffee. I come to county commissioner meeting and I ask questions. It's the bucket works. It takes a long time to build it up. But if you don't do it, you're not only one of 1,000 people they might see, but in addition to that, there are 500 bills that they don't have time to read. And so you might not get that FaceTime then.
I think, did you have something to add to that, Matt?
No, I think Mike really covered it. It is, as much as people may not like it, it is about politics a lot of times. And so getting to know those legislators earlier this year when my office asked for a budget increase, we thought we had it in the bag, and then it was at risk of being cut at the last minute by the Joint Budget Committee. So we put out a pretty significant push through our networks for folks to contact their legislators and the JBC and tell them why our office is important. And I've never heard a politician say this before, but he said, I quote, "I was on the wrong side of history," and he changed his vote so that we got that funding passed. So yeah, hearing your voice matters.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've seen definitely throughout all of these sessions that we've had with this webinar, is the importance of building relationships. I think that is something that we just see industry-wide within outdoor recreation, whether it is, trying to look for that funding or even just working within your communities, just really the importance of building up those relationships. So thank you guys for sharing that. One of our next ones, and I'm really excited for this, and so I encourage you to think about, as I say this question, just one thing, one tip that if you had one thing to be able to say to someone, what is one tip or one thing that you would tell communities wanting to develop outdoor recreation in their area?
I think
Listen to everybody and make sure they feel heard.
Wonderful, thank you.
Lead with passion. Remember why you're doing this. I'm on the 25th floor of an office in downtown Denver. I'd rather be out on a trail somewhere. I think that's the great thing about our industry, is that we get to actively participate in it.
Yeah, I'll just echo Michael and Matt, but with some of our collaborative projects and past agency projects in mind, it's always better to involve all the players, whether they're for or against your project from the beginning. This can really help you navigate some unforeseen challenges up front, rather than when you're ready to break ground, so to speak.
If I had to pick one word, it would be partnerships, which is similar to Laurel's point. Although Matt, I really like yours, and I think that passion is really key. And remember why we're doing this. So, great point.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing your one tip or trick. I know that there is so many things that we could talk about, but thank you for narrowing those down to one. And so this next question, and so Matt kind of talked about it in his presentation. So I was very excited when he started talking about it, because this question came through from one of our registrations. So I want to pose it to the rest of you as well, and probably kick it off to Matt first. But how do you celebrate small wins? So you talked about the importance of celebrating those small wins, but how do you, or how would you encourage people to really celebrate those small wins?
Yeah, and whoever submitted that question, thanks for really giving me the backbone of my presentation. Our office, we like to celebrate the small wins through whatever avenue we can. The smallest grants that we give out that are supporting just one or two jobs. One of my favorite organizations we've worked with is connecting high schoolers who have not had access to the outdoors with apprenticeship opportunities within the industry. And I had the chance to go visit them this past summer and experience a day in the life, and meeting with industry experts, and just to see the excitement on the face of these kids when they learn that, oh, you can build skis for a living, or you can use your science background to track meteorology on ski slopes, is really incredible. So and that's one of our smaller grants, so really encouraging to see. And just again, not forgetting why we're doing this, and engaging with those that we're helping.
Another great celebratory tool here in Wyoming is to thank everybody and pump the tires of your partners. That's a great way to celebrate.
I would add, tell the story. Make sure that you communicate those small wins. I think taking the time to reflect, to talk about it, to recognize it, and then capture that story is really valuable. We have a coalition outside 285, and They really, like, one of their leaders is the Colorado Mountain Bike Association, and they've been working really hard on trails, and they are just a great example of the mountain bike community sitting down with wildlife managers and conservation interests and working on developing kind of a plan together on where it made sense to put trails and where maybe it made sense to do restoration. And now we're funding crews to go in and help implement that vision, and really working toward getting funding for a big trail project. And I think telling those stories is really important, and celebrating those. So yeah, great question.
Yeah, the only things that I would add is, sharing those small successes as often as you can, when you can, wherever you can. Maybe you don't have access to sending out a formal press release, but do you have a friend that works for your local paper? Do you have social media? Can you put it on your website? Do you send out a newsletter? Host a celebratory event. Michael mentioned that earlier in the webinar, and really inviting the community, inviting your elected officials, inviting your partners. Those are all ways to help share the word of mouth. People also want to share how they were involved in things. Maybe it's a community member that was really involved in your project, and they share it on their Facebook, and their family members share it. It's kind of a snowball effect, right? So I think that's something to keep in mind for everyone.
Great, thank you all. That was one of my favorite questions that came in, as it's so important. Sometimes I think we get caught up in stuff, we forget to celebrate those small wins, and they can really make or break this outdoor recreation development in all of our communities, especially some of our more rural communities in both Colorado and Wyoming. So with our last 5 minutes, I want to make sure that any of our participants, if you have any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. But to keep us moving along, one of our other questions that we received is, what are the current trends in outdoor recreation that we as communities should be looking for in the next coming years?
One thing I see, and it's not in my state, sadly, but we're seeing all over the country, unbelievably diverse states and communities building out multi-million-dollar trail systems in one swoop. If you follow a group called Single Tracks online, I think they're now in my opinion, one of the best covering these things, but it's towns in Connecticut, Michigan, Iowa, Northern Nevada, Northern California, places that you'd never even think about visiting. And that's the point. They're saying, let's do this all in one swoop. And here's 40 miles of trail surrounded by 25 towns of, more than 2 million people total. And they're just zoning in on, yeah, you got to build it all at once. And if you follow Single Tracks, you'll see that. I'm sure it's true in other industries too.
So if I had to capture that in one word, it would be pickleball. So we're just releasing our statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan here in Colorado SCORP. Hopefully that'll actually be released next week, and it has a lot of trends. We just did a public recreation survey, and we did a land manager survey, and we also did an economic contribution assessment in Colorado. I would say, like, primarily, there's still a lot of growth. We're not seeing the huge impact that we saw during the COVID pandemic in terms of people getting outdoors, but there's still pretty consistent use in getting outdoors. We're also seeing more kind of consistent outdoors. Just the number of times people get out per week is pretty strong. We have 72% of Coloradans recreate outdoors at least once a week, which is a lot. I think another thing we're seeing is this kind of interest in local parks and local trails and local open spaces. I think people want to be able to access recreation amenities quickly from their home. A lot of people are working from home, and so I think that's a really good asset. But certainly, like, economic contribution is continuing to grow. And I think, their trails continue to be kind of the biggest interest in this state. I'll also say we saw really strong interest in wildlife viewing, and so, like, folks requested that agencies invest in wildlife viewing areas and support those opportunities. But yeah, again, I think, this is a strong growing sector with a lot of potential and opportunity to keep thriving into the future.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of concerns here in Colorado and outdoor businesses that have had trouble just with keeping inventory moving, and this is largely in the wake of COVID shocks to the economy. Based on a webinar that I was on last week with the Outdoor Industry Association, it's expected that there will continue to be some short to medium term economic shocks, perhaps with the presidential transition in hand and impacts of tariffs, particularly in China. But that being said, there are some encouraging signs, some reasons for optimism. Governor Doug Burgum from I believe it's North Dakota, who was appointed as Secretary of the Interior, was pretty. He was at the forefront of establishing North Dakota's outdoor recreation office. So we are encouraged that he is taking over Interior, and hopeful that we can see a federal office established in the next few years, which has been a priority of the Confluence of States, which is the group of OREC offices nationwide.
Laurel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. Just, maybe keeping a pulse on activities that are seeing that continued increase. The BEA report is a great resource for folks to look at and to identify, what are your top contributing activities, what kind of snuck up on everybody, and were those categories that you didn't expect to grow. We're really focusing a lot on, investing in local recreation, ensuring that our state is growing the way that we want it to. Something that also has come up is an increased awareness for the need of search and rescue operations, so much so that we're dedicating the third day of our Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Summit in partnership with the university to that. And then things like, trends, group activities or programs for younger generations. They're more likely to participate in the outdoors if they're offered group activities, or still paying attention to things like there's the need for recreation infrastructure and or programs that accommodate those with disabilities. And those are things that we're trying to implement into our parks and our programs also.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. And so we have come up on our hour and a half. And so first I wanted to say thank you to all of our panelists here today. You all are a wealth of knowledge. So thankful to have you here to share your resources, your tips, your tricks. I also wanted to say thank you to everyone who was able to participate and join us today for contributing to this important conversation. We hope these conversations continue to develop and continue to happen throughout both of our states. And that we hope that you walk away with a few more tips and tricks up your sleeve. This recording of this webinar, like I said, is going to be available on our websites by next week. So the website that you registered for, it will be available on there, as well as on the Worth Institute page within the University of Wyoming. If you have any further questions or would like follow-up, please feel free to reach out to us. Contact information will be sent out as well and available on the websites also. We look forward to continuing to have these conversations in future webinars. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.